Hello, everybody, and welcome to OLC Live, a weekly broadcast on blockchain, branded tokens, and token economies. And we feature weekly guests to discuss the latest in blockchain and the projects that they're working on. And with us today, we have the co-CEO of Carry Protocol, and he is Grant Son. So, Grant, welcome to OLC Live.
Hello. Hi, Jose. Thank you for having me. It's nice to be here.
Great. And you're calling us from South Korea, which is where Carry Protocol is based out of. So I guess, well, today we're going to be talking about branded tokens, and we're going to be talking about bringing blockchain to offline retail and consumer data for offline transactions, which is quite interesting. So let's get started with your background. You first started your career in business consulting, and most recently you worked building a platform which was focused on marketing for business, and it was called Spoka. So can you tell us about your career before starting Carry Protocol?
Absolutely. Yeah, so graduating college, I didn't know what I wanted to do actually. So I joined a consulting company where I was work on in various industries. And I just realized that IT was one of like the more exciting industries because of the fast pace. And so instead of working at a consulting company, I wanted to actually build something myself. And so I'm like, my heritage is Korean. So I moved from the West Coast in the US to Korea a couple of years ago and started a business focused on loyalty for SMBs. So we're talking about like coffee shops, restaurants, like beauty salons, those types of kind of offline businesses. And what we do is we help them with their loyalty programs. So when someone comes into the shop, they can easily check into that shop, put their phone number in, and check into that shop. And the store owner can start creating a database and start marketing to them and sending them coupons and things like that. Yeah, so that type of business. Yeah.
Great. So was that based here in the US, or is that are you talking about is that what Spoka is? My video went out, but is that
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
what's
Spoka's based in Korea.
so what's the link between Spoka and Carry Protocol? Is Carry Protocol sort of a derivative of Spoka? Like, is it?
Right. So there is a relationship. So Carry Protocol is a separate entity from Spoka. We deliberately made it a separate entity because we don't want Spoka to be the only partner. We want Carry Protocol to be a neutral kind of playground for numerous other companies to join. And so if we kind of made it an offshoot of Spoka, then I think it would be a little bit more hesitant or companies would be more hesitant to join the protocol. And so we made it a separate entity. But Spoka plays an important role as the first partner to create that really important first case study that other companies can look at and be confident in.
So can you tell us a little bit more about Spoka and help sort of differentiate the two? So Spoka is a product that helps bring loyalty programs to small businesses. So this is still active today, right? It's you guys have a pretty large user base already with Spoka.
Yeah, it's definitely still active. I mean, we have a monthly user base of 3 million people in Korea. And so far, we've actually accumulated about 17 million users in Korea, which is about a third of the population in South Korea. But also, I think really interesting is that we have our own sales force, and we went out and recruited all these real merchants, and we now have a merchant network of 10,000 shops that range from like your everyday coffee shop to like beauty salons to like even Nike, the apparel stores. So we have a really wide range of shops in our network, and that's kind of has its own life. It's growing every year, and it's a really solid kind of business that we took a long time for us to create. And Carry's going to take advantage of that network. A lot of projects don't have like the distribution in mind, but we really wanted to make sure that our token had a real utility, and so Spoka plays that really important role.
So does Carry Protocol essentially allow for the users of Spoka to take their loyalty program to the next level by tokenizing it?
Yeah, so there's a branded token component. So it's really cool because you can program a lot of really cool tokens. So when you say token, it can be used as like a currency, obviously, but you can also have it be like a prepaid debit for that shop. It could be a coupon. It can be like a 1+1 coupon. It can be all sorts of things. So we want to make it a programmable loyalty experience for the user. But so far, like Dodo already does a lot of that. So that's not the revolution. I think the really cool use of the blockchain is creating a token that's a reward for for sharing that transaction information, which isn't happening today.
Great, especially for offline, which is something that's not very captured. When I think about offline transactions, I still think about the data that credit card companies hold for users. Um, so,
Right.
so can you tell us a little bit about the incentive behind creating Carry Protocol? Because there is this consumer data part of it, right? That's your essential model because that consumer data is so valuable.
Yeah, so being in the offline space, we kind of learn about kind of all sorts of players that kind of that are maybe less apparent to the regular consumer. And one of those is the credit card companies. We think that the credit card companies simply just help us with our transactions, but a lot of cases they collect such rich data. They sell that data, we actually consent to it without really knowing. And so the fact that I buy like basketball shoes at Nike versus running shoes, or that I shop at a particular neighborhood at a particular time, all of this is super valuable data that consumers are kind of just forgetting about and not realizing. But there are all sorts of companies that monetize this data without our knowledge, and so we felt like that really wasn't the way things should be, and so we created Carry Protocol to resolve that issue.
Great. So it sort of addresses two points here, right? Because one of it is the consumer data. We'll get into how blockchain allows the consumers to control their own data and decide whether they want to share it or not, as opposed to some of the large companies out there that share consumer data regardless. And I think the other point is marketing for traditional retail. So can you tell us a little bit about why, like, what are some of the challenges that traditional retailers deal with when it comes to marketing? Is a loyalty program part of their marketing strategy?
Yeah, so for loyalty, so loyalty is really important. I mean, that's all I've been doing for the last 6, 7 years, and we've been preaching to these merchants that return customers amount for to 80% of your lifetime revenue. So you better be damn sure you satisfy those loyal customers with a good program. But every time we talk to these merchants about loyalty, they're really, really interested in getting new customers. And if you look at the way traditional brick and mortar shops try to acquire new customers, it's the same as it was in the 80s. So if you walk out of a subway station in Korea, this morning I encountered these old Korean ladies giving me flyers to these restaurants nearby. It's very traditional, very kind of antiquated. There's not a lot of there's not a lot of ROI calculation involved. So you can spread so many pamphlets out, but really, how many people really saw that and came to my shop versus just walked in by passing by? Facebook recently has made a lot of money off of these SMB restaurants, but they can measure the likes and the shares. But after someone saw the ad on the timeline, did they really actually end up at the shop? And so there isn't a lot of transparency, and there aren't a lot of really good targeting tools for these offline merchants.
Yeah, and something that really stood out to me was with Spoka, you said the consumers use their phone number, and with their phone number, the consumer can pay with cash or credit card. That the consumer data is still, you can still say what they buy without necessarily it having to be a credit card transaction. I thought that was pretty interesting.
Absolutely, because I think if you come to Asia, a lot of the countries here are cash based, right? Like Japan is still very cash based. Southeast Asia is definitely cash based. But so the credit card penetration in Korea is super high, but in other places it's very low. And so if you only do credit card, you can capture, a decent amount of information, but you don't capture all of the transactions that happen offline.
So can you tell us about the current process for a business that wants to implement a new digitized rewards program? So a question for me is Carry Protocol sort of a complement to something like a point of sale system like Square? Is it something that can be integrated with their already existing point of sale system?
Yeah, so at least in Korea, where Spoke has done the work of integrating and being compatible with a majority of the POS systems in Korea. And so it's very easy for us to transition into taking that data and monetizing it with the Carry protocol. So to answer your question, these post companies are definitely our partners. They're complementary to Carry. Carry isn't interested in taking over the post market. We want to work with all the various different post companies to unlock the potential of the data for the consumer.
Great. So it is a complement versus a substitute to a point of sale system. So
there is an interesting component. The answer is yes and no, because we actually install a tablet device that acts as an interface for the customer. And so later on, if certain post systems aren't able to enable crypto payments, we want to help them do that using that interface, because these tablets all have cameras that are capable of reading a QR code. So if you have a crypto wallet, we want to be able to enable people to pay with crypto as well.
Great, very interesting seeing this play out with the integration of being able to accept crypto at brick and mortar locations. So the next question, and I guess we'll get into how exactly Carry Protocol works, is can you sort of compare how advertisers currently purchase data today versus how they will be purchasing data on the Carry Protocol platform?
Absolutely. So as opposed to being like a data marketplace where they purchase the data and then they do things with that data, we see ourselves as more of an ad platform. And so it's, at the end of the day, advertisers are less interested in actually owning that data and more interested in having very high output campaigns. They want really good campaigns. And so what we do is through the Carry protocol, we connect these advertisers to these consumers, and the reward goes directly to the consumer. So not only do they get shown an advertisement in our platform, they get rewarded, they get the ad revenue that otherwise would have gone to platforms like Facebook or other major kind of advertising channels.
Great. So can we go over an example? Say I signed up for the rewards loyalty program for a business. So what does the business need to set up the Carry protocol to be able to have their loyalty program digitized? Is the cost sort of more on the advertiser versus the business?
Yeah. So when you talk, there are a couple of players. So there's the consumer, obviously. There's the store, and there's the advertiser. A lot of cases, the store is the advertiser. So if you're a local shop, you want to target like people right around your area, people who've purchased recently. So in those situations, like we call it hyper local, these offline shops can be the advertisers. But at the same time, advertisers aren't limited to those shops. There are a lot of websites or very like third-party advertisers that care about targeting based off this offline purchase data. And so in those two different situations, we'll be offering tools that match their advertising profile so that they can just as easily target on Facebook the Facebook ad system, kind of be able to target based on people's purchase behaviors.
Great. And so with the implementing or tokenizing, whether it's the loyalty program, comes the use of tokens, and you guys have the Carry token, which the acronym or the ticker is CRE, and you also have some the introduction of branded tokens, which is sort of any branded company can create a branded tokens for the sake of their customer loyalty. So can you tell us about the use cases, or first of all, the differentiation between the carry token and the branded token and the use cases for each of these tokens?
Absolutely. So you need both. In our experience, dealing with these merchants, you can't just have a universal credit because, especially for small businesses, they need people to come back to their shop, not get those points and go to a different shop. So branded tokens offer that loyalty aspect for these SMBs. So the cool thing is that they're programmable. So if you're a coffee shop, you have a different type of loyalty than a restaurant. So restaurants tend to do like credit, like 5%, 10%, but coffee shops tend to go like, come 10 times, get an Americano, or even prepaid, because if you go there very frequently. And so branded tokens are like customizable points, like points on steroids. But the key factor is that we don't envision branded tokens being traded on Binance or these types of like exchanges. If they're able to be exchanged, then the loyalty aspect disappears. And so we want to make sure that the branded token A can only be used at shop A type of thing. The difference between that and the CRE token is that the CRE token is almost like a universal credit that you can freely trade on the free market on any exchange. It's really like, it's just a cryptocurrency that you can use as a reward. And we're going to enable people to pay using the CRE token at any of our locations.
Great, very, very interesting that each business should have their own loyalty point or their own branded token to bring customers back. So are advertisers required to use the CRE token in order to see or acquire the consumer's data?
Yeah, so in order to participate in this ecosystem and access this like rich, group of targets and to segment, you need to stake a certain amount of carry tokens. And also everything is done through a smart contract. And so in the same way that you need to buy some ETH to run a smart contract on the Ethereum network, you need the CRE token to stake a certain amount of CRE tokens to create these smart contracts and run these smart contracts. You also need an additional amount of carry tokens to give as a reward to the consumer. And so the consumer receives not only that targeted offer, like half off of this coffee, but they also get the carry token as a reward, as a revenue.
So does the consumer use, say, the branded tokens to buy, say it's like they have a sort of a marketplace, are they able to buy certain discounts with the loyalty tokens?
Yeah, definitely. So just to list off a few kind of use cases, it can be like a come 10 times, get one free. It can be like 5% cash back every time. It could be like prepaid. You can give them prepaid credit. The beauty of the branded token is that it's customizable, and there can be very smart contracts that can be written to make it so that the merchant has the right type of loyalty for their type of shop. It can be 5%, 4%, 3%. It can be any of those things.
So what's required for, say, a local small business in South Korea to be able to create their own branded token with the Carry protocol? Like, do they need to stake tokens to be able to do that?
They do. So they need to stake a certain amount of Carry tokens to run a branded token campaign to run their branded token system. But your everyday mom and pop shop, they're not like MIT, tech graduates. So the partners in the Carry ecosystem, like Spoka, my existing company, play a really important role. They're going to be the bridge between this new technology and the merchants. And so for the merchant, all they need to do is rely on these agencies to do all the staking, to create this the customized loyalty systems and run it for them. Because your everyday store owner, from our experience, they're so busy, like running the actual shop, buying the ingredients, training their employees, that they can't be bothered to, focus, to spend so much time on the actual technical aspects.
So what sort of dictates how much the business has to stake? Is the branded token dependent on the Carry token?
Yeah, so our current kind of model is staking to access a certain bandwidth of our network. And so we haven't, currently refining our model to understand how much is necessary for the merchant to spend. But we know for sure that if the price gets too high, your everyday merchant isn't going to be able to afford using our system. And we have a very good idea of what that limit is. For example, your everyday shop spends maybe about $200 to $1,000 every month on marketing. And so the amount that they can spend should never exceed that. And so we have to keep the performance of the network in mind and ensure that the scalability is also there for the price, so that the price is very low for the merchant.
Great. That's something very important, obviously, for a small business because they are small and they don't have these large marketing budgets as other companies such as Nike. A question going back to consumer data. So can we go over a case scenario? Like say I have the app, I go to coffee shop. After making a purchase, do I get the option to either share or not share the data that just got recorded onto the blockchain?
Yeah, absolutely. So once we create a link between your app and your public carry protocol ID, it's never going to have your like name or personally identifiable information. But once you create that link, every time you make a purchase at one of our shops, you're going to be given that transaction information. It's going to be stored on your app. You will then have a choice of uploading that and sharing that data to the carry network. If you do so, you'll receive a really kind of a symbolic amount of carry to say, hey, thank you for sharing that data. And later on, every time that data is accessed or you're targeted for a campaign, you'll receive additional carry tokens as well through that wallet application.
Great. So that's interesting. So is it sort of like a royalty? So every time an advertiser pays to access the data, you get paid a certain amount of carry tokens?
Yeah, it's like almost like every time. So, for example, when I run a Facebook campaign, I have a certain number of targets that I get, and I pay Facebook for that, and they keep the money. But in our case, every time there's a campaign and there's X number of people that we target for that campaign, every single one of those people will receive a share of that marketing revenue in the form of carry. So you'll receive carry tokens every time a campaign involves you and your data.
Great, very interesting, and definitely a great way to pay the consumer directly instead of having a third party. In the case, it would be Facebook receiving ad revenue. In this case, you created a way for the advertisers to be able to pay the consumers directly, which is more efficient. So, something I wanted to get into next was comparing sort of other platforms in the industry that are sort of doing the same thing, but not exactly with offline retail. So they have different models. So I'm not sure if you heard of them. Two of them that I know of so far is one of them is Data Wallet, and one of them is Big Token. So can you tell us uh, if you know of these or other players in the market and how Carry differentiates from other blockchain projects?
Yeah, absolutely. Uh, so definitely aware of these projects, and I'm a fan of them because I think we're all trying to achieve the same kind of philosophy, which is democratization of data and empowerment of data to the consumer and to the user. But I feel like our approach is very different and our focus is very different. We're laser focused on offline because we believe that it's still very untapped relative to online and the data that's collected as we surf Chrome and surf the internet. Um, One fact is that 90% of consumer spend is offline. Most of our money is being spent offline, and that's a rich trove of data. And so, unlike the other companies or projects that you mentioned, I feel like we're a little bit more tailored towards offline. We have a hardware component that is required for people to check in, and so I think maybe the system is a little bit different. we're focused a little bit more on SMBs and focus a little bit more on brick and mortar shops, as opposed to like maybe app companies or development focused companies that a lot of the other projects are catered towards. And so I feel like the very difference of just who we're focused on creates just a different system. And I feel like that's kind of the major difference for us. One other difference that I could point out is that we actually really cared. We actually really made a point to focus on distribution, which is why I think Spoka plays a really important role. I think having that first case study is so important, and I think even built into our white paper is the Spoka case study, and so we really have distribution in mind first.
Could you tell us a little bit more about the Spoka case study?
Yeah, so every day, even now, people are checking in with Spoka, and what we want to do is create a seamless transition. So when people check in with Spoka, we want to have it so that they suddenly have this new experience where, hey, do you want to start collecting your data and making money off of it? It's as easy as sending them a text, since we already have their phone number. And if they click yes, then they can directly download the wallet app. And who knows how many of the 3 million monthly users will immediately use it. But I feel like if the first 100,000 users who give it a try have a good experience, we can very easily make that number a lot higher. But the very fact that we have this opportunity to expose the Carry token and the Carry system to these existing users, I think that that's very powerful and pretty unique when compared to a lot of the other projects that are a little bit more focused on the technology and less on the distribution.
Great. Very excited to see the results of that case study, and you guys do have Spoka to work with. And thank you for clarifying that you guys are definitely focused more on the SMB side. So now ending the show, I have a last question. So it's more focused on brick and mortar. So when people think about blockchain, they usually think about technology companies and internet companies, but you guys are focused on the offline retail space. So do you think blockchain and tokenization will revolutionize brick and mortar? If so, why?
Yeah, I think so. The beauty of like blockchain, in my opinion, is the trustlessness. Like you don't need to spend money on banks arbitrating the trust factor between various parties. If you look at brick and mortar, the parties are very apparent. It's the store, the customer, and sometimes the advertiser. And I think that anything that removes the middleman, any situation where middlemen take a lot of the money, is a situation that blockchain can disrupt. And in the case of offline, there are so many different middlemen, and especially on advertising, these small businesses have to pay large amounts of money because of these incumbent entities. And so the beauty of blockchain is that we can dislodge those major entities and make it so that it's more fair for the consumer and for the merchant. We all know that the consumer can have a great experience using blockchain, but people don't think about the merchant and the fact that they are living month to month. And so any effective campaign that they pay less money for is a win for these merchants. And I think blockchain enables that.
Great. And I think what we'll also start to see is not only the amount they pay, but also the value they get from it. I think will be worth vast more because it's going to be coming directly from the consumer. It's going to be more efficient. And yeah, I think we had a great discussion today about brick and mortar and how they can benefit from branded tokens or revolutionizing their loyalty program with tokenization. So where can viewers that are interested about learning more about the Carry protocol learn more about your project?
Yeah, if you want to learn more, you're welcome to come to our website, and that'll link you to all of our other channels, our Medium, our Telegram. We try to make our Telegram as engaging as possible. So please, we invite you to check us out, at those channels.
Great, and I'll go ahead and link Carry Protocol down below for the viewers that are watching live. Thank you for joining us. Be sure to tune in on Wednesday, November 14th. We will be having Glenn Hendricks, which is he's the community manager of the Ostonians unofficial OST Telegram channel. So we're going to be talking about all things OST and his passion for community as a service. So for everybody watching, thank you. We'll see you guys next time.